Welcome to the EXIM Bank's Annual Conference 2021 and to our panel. My name is Rick Angiuoni and I am the Director for Africa at EXIM Bank. Today we have a great panel and a great story to tell. It is an American story. It is a US government story. It is a story of commitment and service. And given that Africa's trade ecosystem is very complex, it is a story that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So we have representatives from Commerce, State, USTDA, Prosper Africa, and Power Africa to describe the value and the products we provide. Of course, you know about EXIM Bank. EXIM Bank is the export credit agency of the US government, and we provide insurance and debt products in support of US exports. And we welcome all exporters, small, medium, large, and aspiring exporters. So we are the building blocks of Build Back Better. So let's turn to the building blocks and let's turn to some introductions, starting with my good friend from Commerce, Deputy Assistant Secretary Camille Richardson.
Thank you so much, Rick, and good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'd like to thank EXIM for giving me the opportunity to speak today, and thank you to my good friend Rick Angiuoni for moderating our panel. I look forward to speaking alongside my esteemed colleagues. I'm actually a native Washingtonian who has been with the Commerce Department for the last 28 years, and I've been with our diplomatic service, our commercial service, since 1998. And now as a member of the Senior Foreign Service, I am the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Middle East and Africa at the International Trade Administration, also known as ITA, which is a commerce bureau. And so ITA is the premier trade promotion agency of the US government. And we have a mandate to support the US business community to export internationally. So as we're all looking to recover from this COVID-19 pandemic, ITA is seeking to do that by increasing our trade and investment ties alongside EXIM and the rest of the interagency. So we actually have three parts to our commercial service. We have a headquarters group, we have a US field, and we have posts internationally. And I'll get into what we actually offer US exporters a little bit later on. We also have a couple of initiatives that I'd like to take the opportunity to highlight, both from ITA and those that we work on with the interagency. What I'd really like to highlight up front for you is an initiative that is near and dear to my heart. It is our Women Empowered Lead Legacies Through Trade and Investment, or WELTI for short. And what we're seeking to do through this initiative is to help reposition women who have been hardest hit by the pandemic to repositioning themselves as leaders at the vanguard of economic recovery by providing data, information, resources, contacts, and sprinkling on a bit of inspiration. And the way we've done that is by hosting monthly WELTI coffee chats. We've had several throughout the Middle East and Africa or MEA region, including South Africa, Ghana, Ethiopia, and we have others coming up as well. And so all of these are part of our March to March, which is the March to March to our Trade Wins event, which is happening in Dubai, March 6th through 8th, appropriately ending on International Women's Day. And we are planning a big WELTI event at the World Expo in Dubai in conjunction with Trade Wins. So I hope that you'll join us virtually, and I hope that perhaps you'll be able to join us in person in Dubai next March. On the interagency side, we work very, very closely on the ground at our embassies and consulates on embassy deal teams, which seek to essentially coordinate all the different resources of the US government around specific transactions to help US companies win. And then, of course, there are the wider initiatives such as Power Africa and Prosper Africa that we're always very happy to coordinate with our interagency colleagues on here in Washington and in the field. As an example of how we cooperate, I want to highlight how EXIM and Commerce specifically work together. In Africa, we often find there is no shortage of a desire for high quality US products and services, but access to financing those purchases can pose a major challenge, and that can be prohibitively expensive. We know that EXIM can help solve this problem by providing financing, and it can thus serve as a critical complement to Commerce ITA's commercial diplomacy efforts and our trade promotion capacities. So thank you again for the opportunity to introduce myself, introduce my agency, give you a little teaser about what we have to offer, and I look forward to the rest of our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. And now to Tim Smith from State Department.
Thanks, Rick. As Director of the Africa Bureau's Office of Economic and Regional Affairs, I'm excited to be here among colleagues and partners to discuss how we are contributing to economic growth, both on the African continent and within the United States. Earlier in my career, I spent 9 years in Africa, in the Central African Republic, Zambia, and Botswana, places with unique business environments, challenges, and opportunities. At all of these posts, I worked on commercial issues and trade promotion. The Department of State's Bureau of African Affairs is focused on the implementation of U.S. policy concerning sub-Saharan Africa. Within the Office of Economic and Regional Affairs, we are particularly focused on advancing trade and commercial ties with Africa to increase U.S. and African prosperity. We achieve this through diplomatic engagement with African governments, coordinating with U.S. government agencies and initiatives, and facilitating ties between the U.S. and African private sectors. We are all working towards improving the trade and investment climates and identifying new opportunities that the U.S. government can support or facilitate. We understand that there are tremendous opportunities for trade and investment between the U.S. and Africa's fast-growing economies, and we are committed to helping businesses and investors unlock these opportunities. Thanks, and I look forward to the rest of the discussion today.
Thank you, Tim. And now to Heather Lanigan.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Rick and EXIM Bank, for bringing us together here today. I'm Heather Lanigan, and I'm the Regional Director for Sub-Saharan Africa at the U.S. Trade and Development Agency, or USTDA. For those that are not familiar with USTDA, we are the overseas project preparation agency of the U.S. government, and our role is unique. We work alongside U.S. industry to facilitate the implementation of quality infrastructure projects in emerging markets. Specifically, we work at the earliest stages, pre-financing, when design choices and technology options are being defined. The goal of our program is to support infrastructure growth in projects that have the potential for the exports of U.S. goods and services, but of course also have the potential to further economic growth in our partner countries. And in order to achieve these results, we execute our targeted program with a focus on the sectors that both the U.S. industry and our overseas partners, the public and private sector, identify as their mutual priorities. These sectors include clean energy, transportation, ICT, healthcare infrastructure, and agribusiness. And of course, this approach is not unique to our Africa portfolio. This is how we operate around the world. And it's an approach that we've witnessed some incredible results over the years. Of course, we see incredible development impact, but we also consistently see a return on investment for U.S. exports and job creation. I think, in fact, right now we're seeing an average of $112 in exports for every dollar that USTDA invests in our program. And I'm sure we'll have a chance to dig in further to our tools. I'll just note that we're really proud of the role we play on the continent, an innovative approach that our program supports our Africa partners and programs in contributing to economic development, while also supporting U.S. industry, jobs, and in economic growth. It's just it's a pleasure to be here, Rick. It's a pleasure to work with all of our U.S. government partners in achieving real results in economic growth here at home and abroad.
Thank you, Heather. You know, I always like to refer to USTDA as a small agency that does great things. And now to a great initiative, which is being headed by great colleague Leslie Marbury.
Thank you, Rick, and thanks EXIM for hosting this great panel. I'm Leslie Marbury, the Acting Chief Operating Officer for Prosper Africa, and it's really an honor to be here with my colleagues and speak with all of you on behalf of the Prosper Africa initiative. I recently joined the Prosper Africa team about a month ago here in Washington, but have spent the majority of my career working on economic issues in Africa, most recently in Kigali, Rwanda for the past 4 years. And I'm really passionate. I think all of us on the panel are passionate about connecting US and African companies with new opportunities. I think we've seen firsthand that this generates jobs, it drives growth, and it advances our goal, Prosper Africa's goal of true shared prosperity. What is Prosper Africa? It's a US government initiative to substantially increase two-way trade and investment between African nations and the United States. So that includes trade and investment flows from the United States to Africa, as well as from Africa to the United States. And this initiative brings together the full suite of US government services and resources across 17 participating agencies to really provide 4 key things to businesses and investors: market intelligence, deal support, financing, and solutions to strengthen business climates. We are very proud to have EXIM as a participating agency for a Prosper Africa agency. Your tools to support US exporters are just invaluable to our shared mission. Thanks again, Rick. Back to you.
Thank you, Leslie. And now to Mark Arado, coordinator for Power Africa.
Thanks, Rick, and welcome to everyone else as well. Super excited to be here. Honored to be part of this strong interagency group that represents, I think, the best of Prosper and Power and all the initiatives and tools we bring to bear. Very excited that EXIM's hosting this conference this year. I was able to do it last year, and it was such a fantastic event. And obviously, I think this is a unique audience. You all track the global economic trends and the positive relationship between the business opportunities, both within and without the United States. And being part of the energy sector, I think we're probably one of the largest sectors that represents growth opportunities. And quite frankly, one where the US can and does and is very able to compete on the continent. I think what we've been working very hard to do over years is continue to make that a level playing field, to make sure that you all see the opportunities that are out there. And there's a lot of them. So we would love more and more companies to participate in the plethora of energy projects across the continent. And we want to do everything we can to support you. Maybe by way of a quick introduction of Power Africa itself. So we launched about 8 years ago. We're a whole of government effort. We're a super deep dive into just the energy sector with 12 agencies mobilizing all the tools, EXIM and all the partners on here. Very excited to see all these colleagues who are working toward the same goal. Since we started, we've already brought over 12,400 megawatts of power and 25 million connections towards our goals on the continent, which is a lot, but there's still a ton to be done. And that means a ton of opportunities. And probably in some of the places where the reason we have an initiative like this is to try to tackle those complex challenges. So I know all my colleagues will speak more about the tools that we all bring to bear on the shared objectives. Very excited to be part of this, very excited to continue to work the best we can to bring these opportunities to you and to make sure you have the best chance to take advantage of them. Back to you, Rick.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And I really appreciate the work that you do and the support that you provide with your team to American exporters in the energy sectors. We all know the challenges in Africa in the energy sectors, with over 600 million people that do not really have access to electricity, with over 400 million people that are in extreme poverty. I think you're bringing Power Africa and Prosper Africa are raising the level of how we can support US exports for the continent. So I briefly spoke about the trade ecosystem, and of course we know that the trade ecosystem in Africa of commerce and finance is complex. And the reason why it's complex is because, as we also know, Africa is a paradox. It is the richest continent, and yet it is the poorest continent. So we have tremendous diversity of risks. And clearly, when it comes to exports and exporters need support. And I see the value and the commitment every day from the various agencies, because, as I've said, given that you have this complex system, it cannot just be finance. It has to be with diplomacy. It has to be with advocacy. It has to do with the network that we have in supporting US exports throughout the continent. So let's dive a little bit more deeper into the products that we offer and the value that we provide. And let's start again with my good friend Camille to tell us a little bit about the network of commerce throughout the continent and how they support US exporters.
Thanks again for that great question, Rick. I really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit more with your audience about some of the services that we offer to US exporters. So I mentioned before that we actually do have a global network. There's 106 offices across the United States, and then there are 78 commercial service posts located throughout the world. 11 of those are on the continent of Africa, with 3 in North Africa and 8 in sub-Saharan Africa. And so these offices are staffed by trained and experienced commercial diplomats who are there to work with local staff, and they offer US companies on the ground knowledge and experience to help companies understand and navigate the markets effectively. They help companies to make trusted contacts, establish viable partnerships, navigate some of the market challenges that can come up on that side. And then, of course, through our commercial diplomacy and advocacy programs, we are actually able to help companies, working, of course, with the deal teams that I mentioned earlier, win some of these opportunities. And in fact, I'm really glad that Heather mentioned the early stage component. We've actually started operating in that space. She and I met with our project manager this week to figure out how we can best coordinate and hopefully coordinate with EXIM Bank as well on how we can position companies even earlier in the deal pipeline to set them up to win. And I can tell you that with the nearly 20 years I've spent in the field, there's nothing more rewarding than getting an email or getting a phone call or getting a letter from a company, thanking us for helping them to win a deal or avoid a legal problem or overcome a market barrier. So I also referenced the 106 US Export Assistance Centers. And in many cases, as you well know, we are co-located with EXIM Bank officers, as well as officials from the Small Business Administration. And these USIACs, as we like to call them, were set up, I think, back in the early 90s as one-stop shops. And they have survived and thrived, and they are staffed by very experienced trade specialists who are organized along industry and regional, and in some cases, topical lines. So one example of that would be our new Global Diversity Export Initiative team, where commerce is really focusing on helping communities or businesses that are typically underrepresented in the trade game get into the game and succeed. So I've already referenced women. We're working with minority-owned enterprises. We're also working with rural companies. And of course, in cooperation with Prosper, we're also seeking to reach out to the diaspora. I hope that, if you haven't taken advantage of commercial services before, that you will check us out, reach out to your local USIAC, as our trade specialists are typically the first point of contact for a company, and they can meet with EXIM and SBA there as well. They can essentially discuss how they might expand into foreign markets, learn more about our market research, our market intelligence, our vetting tools, our partnering tools, and our promotional pathways to the various trade events that we support overseas in the United States, all for very small cost recovery fees. And with the commercial diplomacy and advocacy that we offer, which are free services because it's part of what we do as diplomats, you'll see us working with foreign governments, partnering with them increasingly to improve the business environment on the ground to help US companies succeed in competing for foreign government contracts. One thing I wanted to highlight that I really love about our organization is that we are performance-driven and results-based. Over the last 3 fiscal years, from 2018 to 2020, ITA has supported over $350 billion in US exports, as well as inward investment, and we've helped more than 78,000 client companies. This represents over 1.6 million American jobs. And for every dollar that's appropriated to us by Congress, we have returned a whopping $360 back to the American economy. More specifically to today's discussion, since the start of the fiscal year in 2018, ITA, the International Trade Administration, has supported over $21 billion in exports from the United States to Africa. And behind these figures are numerous wins for small, medium, and large American companies. I wanted to give you one example. Our office in New Jersey is working with a company called JSH International. They're a bioenvironmental company, and we've been working with them to help them expand into Africa and identify local partners to work with as distributors for their agribusiness products. Our trade specialist in New Jersey has worked with our posts throughout Africa, as well as State Department economic sections in multiple African markets to explore the opportunities, identify potential partners, and then help them as they go through the process of signing commercial agreements with these distributors in Ethiopia and Zimbabwe. So they're continuing to move forward, and companies like JSH know how important it is to export in order to recover faster and in order to grow their business very quickly. We're always, and as I mentioned earlier, as we get into the early stage leads end of the pipeline, we have a pilot we call the Express Leads Middle East and Africa. We're looking to expand that to a wider audience in the coming year. And I think that you'll find that it's a really useful tool in the sectors that Heather so kindly highlighted. If you want to learn more about what we have to offer, please go to trade.gov and reach out to your local EXIM. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Camille. Yes, I think it's important to note that EXIM Bank has no offices in Africa. So I can attest to the fact that having colleagues from commerce and state effectively at times representing us is invaluable. I could not do my job and we could not do our work without colleagues from commerce and state. And speaking about state, and Tim, would you like to say a few words?
Sure, thanks, Rick. So as we've heard, the Prosper Africa initiative plays an important role in ensuring effective coordination of U.S. government engagement to improve investment and business climates towards the overall goal of expanding trade and investment. The State Department engages with Prosper Africa by participating as core members of interagency embassy deal teams, which Camille mentioned, and facilitating sector support teams. So Camille mentioned the Foreign Commercial Service network overseas, which tends to be in larger markets. But even if you're interested in a smaller market where FCS isn't on the ground, the State Department can help you working with FCS. So for instance, when I was in Zambia, we were a partner post with the FCS team in Johannesburg, and we were able to offer a number of commercial services to potential investors there. But back to deal teams. So our deal team in Dakar helped advance a deal between the government of Senegal and Weldy Lamont to support U.S. exports of electrical design, engineering, and construction services. The transaction will increase access to reliable electricity for rural communities throughout Senegal, while supporting an estimated 500 U.S. jobs in 14 states. EXIM is supporting the project with approximately $91.5 million in loan guarantee financing. So it's really a great example of interagency cooperation. Here in Washington, the interagency sector support teams bring together U.S. government expertise in various sectors, including clean energy, aviation, infrastructure, and ICT, among others, to help analyze and relay information on potential opportunities between U.S. companies and African customers. We also know that many U.S. companies are already working across the continent. We support these companies with economic and commercial diplomacy to improve the local business environment, and where appropriate, offer official advocacy to help get deals across the finish line. Thanks. Back to you, Rick.
Thank you, Tim. And we are really proud of the Weldy Lamont transaction because it really represents whole of government at its best. And I'd like to very quickly now turn to my colleague Heather, and in introducing Heather and her remarks, I think it's important to note, basically, to apply for an EXIM Bank financing, firstly, there are 3 C's of EXIM Bank that I like, exporters in the audience to know. The 3 C's that I generally refer to are country, content, and credit. Africa, as we know, it's a continent that is 54 countries. And so we may not be open because of the risk profile in some countries, but we're open in most countries. EXIM Bank, as I mentioned earlier, the mission is really to support US jobs by financing exports. So we look very much at content. We want to see US manufacturing. And third, and very important, we are a finance agency. We don't provide grants. We look at credit and we look at the commercial viability of a transaction so that a borrower can repay us. We do not look at projects where, the feasibility is not strong. And so we rely a lot on some of the project feasibility work that either the sponsor does or that the country does. And so we rely very much on the work of USTDA at times, where they actually start the process, because generally there are 5 steps also in applying to EXIM Bank. 1, we need a commercial contract. Then we need an application. Then we do due diligence. Then we have documentation, and then we have disbursement. But before we have a commercial contract, Heather and the team from Camille and from Tim, they play critical roles. So I want to turn to Heather and for the great work that they do across the continent.
Thank you, Rick. I just want to emphasize, as noted previously by my colleagues, we are only successful as an agency because of our network and our partnerships with our government agencies, especially Commerce and State and USAID and others on the ground. So I just want to emphasize that over and over. It's an incredible network and partnership that we have. I think today I'll focus, USTDA has a variety of tools to execute our mission, but I'd like to focus on 2 primary pillars of our program. First, as Rick just mentioned, USTDA provides grant-based funding for project preparation for activities such as feasibility studies, technical assistance, and pilot projects. And the goal of this project preparation is to structure bankable infrastructure deals that can be financed, implemented, and of course, sustained. And just this past year alone, we have launched more than 30 project preparation activities that will help support infrastructure projects in 16 African countries. And of course, we're at the early stages, but when we look at projects and due diligence, we look at the export potential and the financing potential. And so right now we're calculating that our recent early stage investments in Africa will unlock more than $10 billion in financing and generate nearly 4.5 billion in US exports. And of course, I should note that because we work early stage, we work extremely closely, of course, with EXIM Bank and other partners to help fast track our projects to financing. In the last year, we've really focused on this, especially the pandemic, to ensure there's not a gap from the study to the financing. And we've signed MOUs with entities such as the Trade and Development Bank, InfraCredit, among others. So that's an area that it's our bread and butter, our project preparation activities, which are incredibly, I think, important for financing. But the second pillar that I'd like to highlight, and this is an area that we work with all of our US government colleagues as well, is our partnership building events. We convene reverse trade missions and workshops to connect project sponsors to US companies. In fact, in the last decade, I think we've hosted more than 50 reverse trade missions for African government and business leaders from 18 countries. And through these visits, we see immediate results. We are connecting decision makers to hundreds of US companies that offer innovative solutions and services. And we see a pretty quick return on these investments because, as we all know, when you bring the right people together, good things happen. And so it's an area that we're really proud about of our reverse trade missions and our workshops. It's an area we're very committed to. And then next year, I think we have 15 plus reverse trade missions planned. And so I'd encourage everyone to keep a close eye on our events page at ustda.gov and participate as much as possible. Over to you, Rick.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, being cognizant of time, let me turn to Leslie.
Thanks, Rick. And it's great to go after my colleagues at Commerce, State, and USTDA. They have such terrific stories to tell. So we hear from businesses, and just as a reminder, Prosper Africa is engaging not just in exports, but on all sides of trade and investment. We hear from businesses, they're not sure where in the US government to turn. And in fact, the US government has more than 75 different trade and investment tools, and these can be overwhelming to navigate. So in Prosper Africa, with the agencies that are on this panel was started, they proposed a way of doing business that would have the US government take the burden on itself of bringing these resources to businesses instead of making those businesses sometimes arduously hunt for them all across the US government. And so while we say there's no wrong door, you can reach all of us through any participating agency. Prosper Africa does have transaction advisors in Washington and supporting the embassy deal teams throughout the African continent, and they're available to work with you. Our advisors are really relationship builders, and they are seeking to understand the needs of businesses, working one-on-one to provide customized support package that connects you to the right tool or resource in the US government, including those on this panel, as well as SBA or USDA, to really address their needs. How do you reach us? I would encourage those in the audience to visit our website, prosperafrica.gov, where you will find details on these tools and resources from across the US government, along with an email address to reach out to our transaction advisors. And Rick, in noting your concerns about the time, I'll cede the rest of my, my thoughts for the moment and hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. And Leslie spoke about network. Mark, you have a very extensive network. Over to you.
Thanks, Rick. No, again, much like Leslie, it's always nice to be able to go last. As a coordinator, you get a really good job in the sense that you get to speak about everyone else's successes. We are the sum of our parts. We are commerce, we are TDA, we are EXIM, we are state. Or MCC and the Development Finance Corporation as well. We're 12 agencies that try to make sure we understand very holistically what the sector is about. And I think with that holistic understanding, we're able to provide services that hit on all sides. Sometimes it's directly to you. Sometimes it's on behalf of you. Sometimes it's making sure where you're going to land in the energy sector has the right regulatory reforms, has the right policies, and so forth. And what we tried to do over the years, and I think quite effectively, is make sure that we work with each agency to do what their competitive advantage is, that the value added of each agency, including USAID, who I directly work for, is able to do what they do best. And then together, we work together instead of just aligning ourselves and saying, okay, all 12 of us are pointing toward the same goal. We say, okay, TDA, you're really good up front on the feasibility study. Why don't we figure out a way to let you lead on this? Commerce, of course, you're the engine when it comes to looking at trade deals and facilitating trade flows. State, economic statecraft, diplomatic frontline, AID, the development tools, the transaction advisors, so forth. EXIM and Development Finance Corporation, you're the dollars. And so together we become we become so much more than just 12 agencies. But most importantly, and I think hopefully you get this message loud and clear, and hopefully it's self-evident when you reach out or we reach out to you, is that we're all trying to make your job better. We don't see it as the US government trying to develop programs. It's the private sector. It's the innovation, the resources, the know-how, the experience that we need to make sure understands this content, understands this unique set of business challenges. And by doing that, I think we're able to be incredibly effective. So it's nice to go after my colleagues and talk about all the great things we do together. I think that really puts us in a good spot with the new administration's Build Back Better World objectives to understand how we can put these tools together in a singular way and move on those larger goals. Right now through this partnership model, and I mentioned that it's the 12 agencies, but it's also 19 development partners. And it's also at this point over hundreds of companies. There's 205 US companies on the ground alone to achieve these shared energy access goals and increase the investment in the energy sector. So let me walk you through one example. I know we're short on time, just to kind of give you an idea. First of all, I love the Willie Lamont story. We tell that one all the time. That is probably one of the best Power Africa projects in terms of showing how the interagency works together. But another one in Nigeria, a group called Haven Hill Synergy is a mini grid developer that's worked to successfully expand its footprint and offer the first time energy access to 500 people so far, with plans of reaching 300,000 with its solar mini grids. So far, 3 USG agencies really playing their key roles have worked. USADF, the Africa Development Foundation, Power Africa partner, provided the very early stage grant funding through a blended finance investment program with our private sector partner All On. With this funding, Haven Hill was able to design and install solar mini grids in 4 villages. So then USTDA comes in, provides funding for a series of feasibility studies to deploy an additional 110 mini grids across Nigeria. And then USAID comes in with our transaction advisor support and directly to Haven Hill. And then we also had our own catalytic grant funding to look at healthcare electrification. So we kind of went with this idea, grew it, grew it in terms of numbers, grew it in terms of theme. Obviously, healthcare electrification post-COVID is a massive goal. And together, this is more than the sum of its parts. Any one of us working alone would have accomplished something. All of us working together, I think, is the reason we have initiatives, why we have interagency presidential initiatives to make sure that we give the best value with our taxpayer dollars, your taxpayer dollars, for you in terms of building out these services. So I'll stop there. I think it's great. I also would, of course, want to highlight something that Camille mentioned, Express Leads Africa, that we build out with them. It's a fantastic idea. We really want to get the speed of opportunity to you quicker. That doesn't make sense. We want to speed up the opportunity in front of you quicker, right? We want to make sure that by the time you're ready to react, you can put together the right teams, do the right research, mitigate that risk the much as you can. So when you come into this, for some of you, relatively new market, you're ready to go. We need to shorten that time. So as soon as we know what's happening, we get out in front of you. Express Leads is one tool we do that with. So back over to you, Rick.
Well, fantastic. Well, let's not stop there yet, because I'm going to stay with you, Mark. You are the second coordinator of Power Africa. I think you're leading Power Africa to a higher level, a level that's being referred as Power Africa 3.0. I think it's great what you're doing. And my understanding of Power Africa 3.0 is quite ambitious. And I compliment you for taking on such an ambitious mandate about ending energy poverty, energy access, which clearly, it's a human need, given what energy can provide. But more importantly, I think Power Africa 3.0 is about unleashing US capital, US technology, which is going to be a game changer. So given, again, cognizant of time, tell us a little bit about how we are going to engage more US exports and more US technology, which clearly I think would be a game changer, especially given also renewable energy and climate change that we want to address. And for Africa, clearly it's a very important sector to address.
No, thanks, Rick. And yeah, I will be cognizant of time. You give me the softball question, the passion question. No, I love what we do. I mean, not only because you can see a real direct line on so many different ways as to why it's important to us, to the US, to the world. Energy poverty is a real thing. Energy, of course, I think undergirds education and undergirds economic development, large and small, healthcare. Everything needs energy to work. And I think we take it for granted in the sense that so many of us, maybe even during COVID, I got younger kids. I never wake up and worry about my daughter turning on the computer or turning on the light. We need to make sure that we, as a U.S. development agency, one of our mandates can deliver on that. So the first goal, and we'll see how we go with the monikers in terms of reestablishing ourselves, making sure we're aligned with everything that's going on with the new administration and all the fantastic goals we have together. But ending energy poverty is definitely one. We need to make sure we understand that there's tools we can build, and then the U.S. innovation and resources has to be part of that story. So what's some ideas? Like utilities of the future. We need to reconceptualize how you bring power to people in Africa. I think that will unlock a ton of opportunities in terms of building out the infrastructure, in terms of building out the expertise, et cetera. We need to make sure we have smart, efficient, and modern grid management systems. I can think of a ton of opportunities there for U.S. business to be part of that. We lead the world in some of these technologies, and we lead the world in some of these best practices. And then a lot of this is focused on creating the space for dollars to come into the sector as well. So, the DFC recently announced their $100 million call for applications on distributed renewable energy. The idea that we could build self-sufficient mini grids, as they were, but they're really macro mini grids, an oxymoron, I know, but the idea that you have these standalone systems, there's a lot of money in that with some of our partners like the Rockefeller Foundation and a few others, who together have pledged over $1 billion, that's a B, in philanthropic capital to match market dollars to build out these systems going across. So that's one. Two would be the accelerating the carbon-free future, as Rick mentioned. Of course, climate change is probably the challenge of our time, no doubt about it. Power Africa is going to be part and parcel of this. 75% of the people worldwide who lack access to electricity are in sub-Saharan Africa, and they're going to get it eventually, hopefully sooner than later. And we have to make sure together we build it out in a way that is climate friendly. And this is a great news story, I think, for the US private sector, because we're doing this. Almost all, a lot of these technologies, a lot of these know-how, a lot of energy hubs is an idea we're playing with, are going to come out of the US. So how do we get your resources, your innovation, your capital, your expertise, your experience, and so forth over there as quickly as possible to help that 75% of people build the right grid and pathway today. So the emissions pathway looks beautiful for the future. So that's regional integration of power pools. And of course, that's leveraging programs such as yours, Rick, the EXIM's Clean Energy Export Initiative to promote renewable energy, energy efficiency, and energy storage as we go forward. Of course, I could go on and on about USTDA and commerce and states' role in this. There's tons of things we do. In interest of time, the third goal real quick is the explicit goal of bolstering that US-Africa private sector corridor. We know it means we have to share better market knowledge with US firms. It means we have to create better international business linkages. By we, I mean commerce, I mean TDA, all these, I mean EXIM, I mean DFC, the agencies who have these mandates, who are doing a fantastic job, who I think are going to try to accelerate around the energy space, paired with that regulatory work we can do, paired with that transaction device to make that holistic effort going forward. One opportunity here, I'll just mention by name a little bit, it's called Mega Solar. This is the idea that we're working with Botswana and Namibia to put on 2 to 5 gigawatts of solar energy over time. This is in part to understand how we can start changing the region's dependency on coal production, and how we can move that to a clean energy build out. But of course, that build out is going to be on the back of private sector engagement. That is going to take way more resources than any one person can write a check for. So we need to crowd all of you in. Anybody who has anything to do with renewable energy, there's going to be a ready-made market. And I think that's key. I think that'll help really mitigate your risk as you go forward. So if you're a US company, reach out to Power Africa, much like Prosper. We are kind of Prosper's energy wing for Sub-Saharan Africa. We'll deliver on the goals for them. We're proud to partner with them and everyone else. Let us know. We'll get you to the right people. We'll start the partnership, and hopefully it'll be a long-term relationship from you starting with an idea all the way to building out your project. Back to you, Rick.
Hey, yes, thank you, Mark. Clearly, the energy mix is critically important to Africa. And to Leslie. Leslie, you're relatively new within Prosper Africa, but you bring a wealth of experience. You have the challenge of bringing whole of government together, but more importantly, the various products that you're launching, such as the virtual deal room and trying to engage with US industry. A few words on what we're doing with the implementation plan, the Prosper Africa strategy in support of US exporters.
Thanks again, Rick. And I appreciate the question. I think that Prosper Africa really stands for this mutually beneficial partnership between the nations of Africa and the US. And that's really the foundation for the engagement. I think almost daily we hear from businesses, from people really across the continent, asking for more US products, more US content, and more US private sector investment. And we're really just committed to working through this implementation plan of Prosper Africa and working across the interagency to break down the barriers to get the US exports and investment into Africa. And this includes looking at how we mitigate risk and provide additional information and financial tools to our US partners. I really see Prosper Africa's role as supporting US and African businesses, investors. We know it's the private sector resources, as Mark was saying, that will really have the biggest impact. And really, I look across the agencies that are on this panel and just want to give a quick flash of the numbers. Camille mentioned a few, but when you aggregate the power of all of the departments and agencies on this call, you can look at, since Prosper Africa launched in 2019, the US government has helped businesses, investors close more than 800 deals. This is estimated over 50 billion in new exports and investments, which is a tremendous success. And we're really, with this new chapter of Prosper Africa, trying to build on this momentum. We recently launched the Prosper Africa Build Together campaign to energize the United States commitment to supporting trade between US and Africa and investment. And through this, we're really launching a series of deal days to connect US and African businesses to new opportunities in sectors that are ranging from healthcare to technology, things that are really have come out as extremely important as we work together on building back better together after COVID. And I'm just mindful of time. I'm going to not mention my examples because all of the examples of the agencies are really representative of what Prosper Africa is trying to accelerate and bring to the table. Thanks, Rick.
Yes, thank you, Leslie. And Tim, of course, State Department is critical. I mean, diplomacy in Africa, especially in doing transaction, is extremely important. So obviously, ambassadors throughout Africa do a great job. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the resources of the U.S. embassies?
Sure, absolutely. Well, while the course of the COVID pandemic remains unpredictable, we are working with our partners to find ways to build back better. I'll say it too, build back better around the world. What that means is U.S. private and public sector support for countries in Africa who are essential to our shared goal of inclusive economic growth, creating jobs and harnessing technology to improve our lives while addressing the climate crisis. The State Department, of course, supports Power Africa and Prosper Africa and the Build Back Better World Initiative to address these challenges and enhance economic growth. We're working closely with each of these initiatives, as well as with the other agencies on the panel, to help strengthen countries and strengthen their enabling environment, including the legal and regulatory frameworks that are critical to attracting and retaining U.S. investors. U.S. investors, on the other hand, can offer unique benefits: transfer of technology and know-how, high standards of corporate governance and transparency, local content, and job creation. Creation of mutually beneficial partnerships is our great competitive advantage. It sets American firms apart from our competitors, and we need to continue to convince our African partners to understand and believe in the value that we add. U.S. companies provide skills development, innovative solutions, and foster a culture of entrepreneurship and inclusiveness. For this reason, through our embassy deal teams, we strongly advocate on behalf of U.S. businesses and are leveraging every tool at our disposal to support U.S. trade and investment in Africa. Back to you.
Thank you, Tim. Excellent. And Heather, so you're the small agency that does great things. Okay, tell me a little bit more on how you're making a difference. You have a great team. I love working with your team, and hopefully we can do a lot more together.
Rick, I certainly hope so, and thank you. The feeling is mutual with EXIM Bank, of course. I'll also be brief, but I'll just state that working in partnership with U.S. industry, I firmly believe that there's so much that we can do together to further economic growth in our partner countries. As noted, the goal of USG's dual mission is to support economic growth both in the United States through job creation exports, but at the same time, we are equally committed to economic growth in our partner countries. And I was thinking about our program today and just looking at the past year, which has been a fantastic year. I think the two key themes I've seen this year in our program have been increased programming in energy access and ICT connectivity, which are obviously incredibly important for economic growth and resiliency, especially considering the current circumstances of the pandemic. In the last year, working very closely with U.S. industry, we have worked on innovative approaches towards expanding digital infrastructure, especially rural connectivity in many countries. For example, in South Africa, we're working with Microsoft and Adaptrum on a pilot project that is assessing the viability of TV white space technology. It's helping to build the business case to extend affordable broadband access to underserved communities. And so we're really excited about what we're doing in the ICT space on connectivity, and there's so much more to come. So stay tuned on that. But also, of course, as Mark has mentioned, energy access is incredibly important to USTDA and many other U.S. government agencies as well. And with absolute credit to Power Africa and Mark's fantastic team, we've really expanded our engagement and investment in this space. Mark mentioned the Haven Hill project, which we're extremely proud of, but we also have a variety of other projects. And a project we recently supported in Nigeria, it's a great project within a woman-owned company called Sosai Renewable Energies. And this project that launched this spring is expected to bring 100 solar-powered mini-grids to rural communities across Nigeria. And this project in particular is expected to create real economic opportunity for thousands of women, their families, and the communities that they support. I could go on. There are so many great examples of expanding access to connectivity, both in the internet space and energy. But I'll just close with noting, as shared and is evident by the remarks of my colleagues, I think the most important takeaway to share today is that we are sincerely committed to leveraging our resources and full range of tools to drive mutual economic growth and foster longstanding partnerships between Africa and the United States.
Thank you. And with that note, Camille, you have spoken about something that I think is great, a new commercial engagement with Africa. I'm going to give you the last word.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate the opportunity to round out this very august panel. We've heard the phrase "Build Back Better" referenced several times by my colleagues, and the commerce plays an important role in that on the domestic side here in the United States, as well as internationally with the Build Back Better World strategy. Some of your clients on the call may have also tuned into the Corporate Council on Africa's U.S.-Africa Business Summit, where our Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimundo, opened up the plenary. Also, our Deputy Secretary of Commerce, Don Graves, participated in a key panel on SME financing. And of course, some of us here were on another panel as well. So you can see that the Commerce Department is committed to the partnership that the President stated would be part and parcel of U.S. foreign policy toward Africa. And we're doing that in a number of ways. So here domestically, we're teaming up with Prosper Africa and designing an outreach strategy to specifically target it at small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as the diaspora community. But then also I've organized and launched a national listening tour on Africa, where we're really looking to get inputs from the public and the private sector. So the private sector, these are companies that have been experienced at doing business on the continent, and they can actually help us to inform and shape and build a strategy that will benefit them. Similarly, we would love to get those types of inputs from the African private sector. I've been taking advantage of the pandemic and utilizing our technology to pay virtual visits to the continent, where I've had opportunities to speak with some government decision makers in various countries. I've posed the same question. We're looking to shape something new as a leading trade promotion agency that will best serve our partners. And so we want to do that in partnership, with our own government, with the interagency. We want to do that in partnership with our own private sector. And of course, you want to do that in partnership with the public and private sector on the other side. I mean, the Commerce Department, our mission is about economic growth, about economic recovery. Typically, we're focused on the United States, but we want to do that in partnership with Africa to ensure that we all emerge from this pandemic basically assuring mutual and shared prosperity for everyone. Mark had mentioned Power Africa. Of course, our trade lease system was made possible with seed capital from Power Africa. So there is an Express Leads Power Africa that we partnered on, along with the Express Leads MIA. Again, our commercial diplomats are there on the ground, offering counseling, connections, and cachet to help U.S. exporters partner successfully with African governments and with African companies to help us all build back better together. Thank you, Rick.
Well, thank you very much, panel. You're very impressive. There is no question that America can make a difference. We have the technology, we have the know-how, we have the capital, and we have the commitment of all of you and your teams. And I must say it's very impressive. And as I've noted earlier, we welcome all exporters, small, medium, large, and aspiring exporters. Thank you again, and enjoy the conference.